One of the very few international reporters who was in Baghdad the moment those airstrikes rained down was Princess Reem Ali of Jordan, a friend and former colleague who was CNN's reporter in Baghdad. She spent years living and reporting from inside Iraq before the invasion began. I spoke with her earlier about her reflections on this moment in time. I started by asking her if it was clear before that shock and awe moment, if war was imminent.
I think there was, it wasn't so clear cut. Of course, in retrospect, you might think, well, it was obviously going to happen. Maybe when we were on the ground, it wasn't clear cut because, you know, Becky, we were following the inspectors. And that was something, it was a very interesting moment, I suppose. The Iraqis had actually, in a rare move on the part of the government, allowed reporters to follow the inspectors absolutely everywhere. Not only that, but they would literally make sure that, you know, there was not a single inspection that we did not know about. We crossed the country, we crisscrossed the country by car, by helicopter, on those old helicopters that hadn't been sanctioned, that hadn't been sort of serviced for years because of the sanctions. And we literally went around the country with the inspectors, talking to the inspectors all the time. And so there was also this this very strange, we felt we were in this strange world where we were with the inspectors. There was nothing from what we saw and from what the inspectors told us. And so, of course, we were very puzzled as to the noise that was made outside of Iraq, which was, no, there are, and the certainty with which there was, according to some people outside, weapons of mass destruction, and therefore that justified the build-up to the war. So we thought, well, if the inspectors give a clean bill of health, then why should there be a war? Then there was always that doubt that was put in by the Iraqi government. And then it became very clear to us who were on the ground, Becky, because the big question was, if there are no WMD, why isn't the Iraqi government, why isn't Saddam Hussein saying very clearly that there are no weapons of mass destruction? And of course, for those of us on the ground, it became so obvious. You don't say that when you've come out of a 9-year war with Iran, and after what happened in Iraq, and you have such a neighbor, such a big, powerful neighbor as Iran. And in fact, that was, of course, it was very obvious that that was the main reason. Nobody wanted to say to a neighboring power, the emperor has no clothes. So they had to keep that, I suppose they had to keep that measure of fogginess around that. I think maybe January of 2003 was, it seemed to me that it was inevitable. I hadn't left Iraq, I think, since September of 2002. When you spend so much time and you know, you get to know people there, people coming to ask you not only when is the war going to start, and they expect you to know, will it be a quick war, will it be, you know, and of course everybody had their own idea of what was going to happen. I think we pretty much knew that there was a declaration made on the 19th of March, and that was clear that this was imminent.
What do you remember about that night, early morning, when the bombing began?
It's unmistakable. I mean, that sound. We all met in the room that had the sort of best view to sort of be able to see what was happening and to be able to report. And it's strange. I have that image very clearly in my mind, Becky. And whenever I see it on TV, it sort of really brings back the, you know, your heart stops for a second. And it brings it back every time. Every time I see that on TV, even if it's in a movie, you relive that moment every time. You know, you could see Baghdad, and you're looking at that with the light, the bombing, the sound, thinking, you know, I'm safe because you can see it happening over there. But there's people I know who are out there, and are they safe? And what's happening to them? I'd spent a lot of time there, as I said, you know, I lived there. And so I lived with people. And of course I knew about their life stories, and they would reminisce very often. And they would talk about having been through the Iran-Iraq war. They would talk about having been through that other war, the 91 war, after the invasion of Kuwait, when, you know, the other US war in 1991 against Iraq. And here was a people who, having been through all that, were now preparing to go through another war. There were different Iraqs. There was the Iraq of Saddam Hussein and his government. There was the Iraq that was seen by outside, but there was the Iraq that we saw through the Iraqi people. That was an Iraq that was a, daily life of challenges because of the sanctions. It was challenging because there was a war upon them soon, and they had nowhere to hide. We could leave whenever we want to. At the end of the day, we were expelled. So for us, it wasn't, here or there. But we knew that at the end of the day, we had choices that they didn't have. And I think maybe that's what made it very hard to leave, because we felt that it was also our responsibility to shed a light on what was happening to those same people during the war.